The project is a federally funded project using the National Vegetable Levy and federal government funds to actually look at soil wealth and sustainable agriculture, I suppose. To look at minimum till and reduced tillage vegetable production. And we use in here, we've got a baby broccoli crop at the moment. The project's been in operation for about 12 months. In our no-till bay, we've actually had no cultivations go in that soil for the last 10 or 11 months. So we're at Bulmer Farms in East Gippsland in Lindenow, and Bulmer Farms grow a lot of baby leaf, spinach, rocket, tatsoi, mizuna, a lot of lettuce, coloured lettuce, cos lettuce, iceberg lettuce, and a lot of bunching or baby broccoli as well. And baby broccoli's in this crop at the moment. The project's actually challenging the conventional tillage practices that occur in intensive horticulture. So the intensive tillage practices might involve ripping and rotary hoeing and disking soil before they actually hill up or just straight bed form their soil. And what we're looking at doing is reducing those passes, reducing the impact on the soil, trying to increase organic carbon, increase soil humus, minimise our disturbance on the soil microbes, and try and make I suppose the whole horticulture, intensive horticultural industry a lot more sustainable from a soil management point of view.
So we started off with spinach.
Yep.
So we started off with spinach over there in the conventional tillage and in the reduced tillage bays, so the two in the centre. And at the same time, I think they were sown on the 7th of July. On the same day, we actually sowed brassica cover crop in the no-till bay here close to the road, which was Caliente mustard, but we didn't incorporate it, so we didn't get any of the, many of the fumigation benefits, obviously, because it's permanent beds, we're not tilling that.
We were purposely just looking at it from a carbon cropping point of view. We weren't looking at it from a biofumigation point of view.
Yeah, to be perfectly honest, we did want to put peas and wheat,
yep,
or peas and something in this first bay here, but we couldn't get it through the spider seeder, so we changed to the mustard. I don't know, is there anything else we need to say about that first crop of spinach there? I think for me it yielded pretty similar to whatever else was on the farm. I guess as you would expect, given it was prepared in the same way that everything else on the farm is.
Yep.
I think it may have been cut a fraction early, but
yeah. So yeah, we've got so these beds here that were formed before we put the cover crop in. These beds have not been touched for about 10 months. So yeah, these beds have not been touched at all.
So what are we up to now? So we're up to the second crop of spinach. Genuinely not. We're up to so now after that first crop of spinach there, we put spinach again in the same replicate, so in the conventional tillage and the reduced tillage. The mustard was still in the no-till bays there. So the second crop of spinach was in the start of October and out just at the end of October. That I know was cut almost a week early. But around that same time, so actually the middle of September, that's when we mulched the mustard that was here. And I guess just the way it panned out, I think we got some rain around that time. I'm not sure, I wasn't actually here. But the mulch crop sat there for almost 4 weeks before we went in there with the lettuce. And I guess from that point of view, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, that was probably pretty good that it did get to sit there for a little while. It made it a little bit easier, given that the crop had been sprayed off and it was starting to die down. It made it easier to go in there and transplant the iceberg when we got to that stage in early November. Is there anything else?
Probably just to run through the cultivation practices. The furthest bay and a half over there were discs, ripped and bed formed. The minimum till or reduced till bay here was just ripped and bed formed, and this one here was, did we rip it before we bed formed as well? Yeah, ripped and bed formed originally, but when we planted the lettuce, obviously it had no cultivation at all.
The lettuce crop was transplanted in week 47, which I think is early November, and then it cut in week 2, so just in the second week of January.
So lettuce went across the whole lot, across the 3 different cultivation practices.
We've actually got a few more stories about transplanting the lettuce and what an experience that was, all 6 or 7 hours of it. But we'll get to that a bit later when we go down to the plant, and we can actually show you what we were talking about and some of the issues we had with that. So I guess while the lettuce was in here, after about 3 or 4 weeks, the conventional and reduced tillage bays, not a problem. But over here where we'd had the cover crop and where the soil had remained completely undisturbed, we were starting to get a few slugs and snails creeping in, starting to make a little bit of damage to the leaves. I don't know if in the end we did actually bait for them. We may have sprinkled bait around the edges, but not in the crop. Yeah, that's this crop we baited.
We actually had the leaves getting torn too by the cover crop.
Yeah, that's right. Where the remnants of the cover crop, remained, they were puncturing the leaves when they were flapping in the wind. So I guess that's probably the highlights of growing the lettuce. It was pretty stock standard aside from that. When it came time to harvest, it was pretty interesting. I guess what I will say from the outset is that a lot of the things I'm going to say are very anecdotal. I'm not actually sure exactly how much of what we've done had, contributed the way it did. But to start off,
same variety of lettuce across the paddock.
Yeah, that's right. So
Same date.
We started harvesting the conventional first. I mean, the permanent beds first, and they were probably, from a maturity point of view, they were probably spot on. But then I found as we got across the replicates here, so into the reduced tillage and then into conventional, the maturity of the conventional tillage was about 7 days different between the stuff that was grown in the beds that had the cover crop and the stuff that obviously had been directly transplanted into tilled beds. So as we got across there, things started to lighten off. Things became very irregular as we got closer to that side. Heads were very open, quite puffy. But I think if we'd have left the conventional tillage for another week, we might have got some pretty similar yields. But I guess the other thing we had against us, in January we harvested those. We actually had quite a bit of varnish spot affecting the lettuce across all three of the replicates there. But one thing I will say is that in the first one here, where they were mature a little bit quicker, the signs of varnish, they were only just starting. So we actually got some pretty acceptable yield out of there. Whereas if we'd have left that for the 7 days that it needed to get the weight in it, you would have cut 10 or 20% over there. It would have been a bit of a disaster. So I think that's covered everything. I mean,
yield to actually say that there was more yield in it.
Yeah, that's right. So I have weighed those. So the heads here averaged about, again, they were probably a little bit small for what we're after, but they were about 650 grams a head over here. And then as we got over to the edge here, they were about 400, which is pretty small for what we're after.
We're not trying to be idealistic and say you've got to have no-till. It's about treating tillage as a tool, and you've got to do it sometimes, and just working out when you use it to your best advantage. And really what we want to do is say, well, actually the biology in the soil can do a bloody good job. You don't have to rely on the tractor all the time. It's not been touched for 10 months. So we've grown 3 crops on it and it hasn't been touched. From a lot of soil physical properties point of view, I can't see the difference between something that hasn't been tilled for 10 months and something that was a month from tillage. From this one here, if I break it up, you see it's just full of holes. So it's just the biology in the soil has actually built a framework for the roots to grow and the soil and the nutrients to be released. So that's over 10 months of not touching it with an implement. This one here was cultivated, so it was disked and then bed form, and it was a lovely soil. But basically, you can see there's no sort of structure in it. You're creating a structure from tillage, but that structure is very transient. It goes, and so if you think that's after 30 days, it's basically broken down and has very similar properties to a no-till soil after 10 months. What we've done here is we've let the bugs in the soil make a structure for us, and then we can use that structure over time. And so really that's the advantage, and I was pretty surprised when I came and dug the soil this morning and said, wow, I can see that pretty clearly, that we've created an environment just by excluding tillage and putting some cover crop.
The 6 months from planting and then till harvest, that our ground is worn out, it's well compacted from harvesting a lot of times. So then we go back into a cover crop, and that gives us some control around weeds, and it builds our soil back up, and it helps us with the compaction that we've had. How can we use some of these practices here into what we're doing commercially? I think some thoughts that I've had, we can come out of our cover crop straight into a baby leaf, perhaps not, and then not do cultivation as we have had after every, that's what we usually do after every crop. Just spray out and perhaps direct sow, like Stuart's done here with the baby brock, direct sow a lettuce straight in, and then after that cultivate just with the bed former maybe, and plant a baby leaf again. And in doing that, perhaps keep more of our cover crop in our soil for longer. So we're going from the cover crop and planting and only really cultivating a couple of times, which will give us the benefit of the cover crop in the soil, because every time you cultivate, you break it up some more, and then you've got to get back in there sooner with another cover crop, was my thoughts. Some challenges I see from what we've done here on the site. The biggest one is having the right machinery to do the job. The planning has been difficult because we've only modified equipment that we've got, that we use with conventional methods, and that has given us some challenges, but I do believe that you can get the right equipment. It's a matter of spending the money, and is that going to, you would spend it if you knew you could make it back, wouldn't you? A couple of other issues that I saw, this paddock here, we had the mustard cover crop, Stuart. We left that for some time. While the lettuce were here, it had built a bit of a host to slugs, which had damaged the lettuce a small amount compared to over here. We didn't have any. And another thing with cover cropping, getting it to break down and everything takes a lot more time. So if you're getting in there and cultivating your ground, you can get in quicker, get more crops through, perhaps make more money. But if the crops aren't so good, it's a balancing act, isn't it?